It was December 23rd, 2021. Amber Cavanagh, wife, mother, healer, was supposed to be wrapping gifts and prepping for her favorite night of the year. But instead, she lay almost motionless, paralyzed, silent, and dying. A stroke had carved its way into the center of her brain. Doctors told her family, "Say everything you want to say now. You probably won't see her again." But here's the thing. Amber heard them. She was still there, somewhere behind the veil. She watched her husband weep. She watched her children driven to the hospital. She watched herself from above. And then the sun touched her face through the Care Flight helicopter window. And just like that, she was gone. Gone, but not dead. Amber opened her eyes to a garden more beautiful than anything on earth. A long white dress, bare feet on radiant grass. Loved ones long past stood to her left. To her right, versions of herself from other lifetimes. And in front of her, waiting, her spirit guides. She says, "Everything glowed with this golden rainbow light. It was the most love I have ever felt. And I knew I wasn't alone. I had never been alone. This is the story of what happened next." Amber Cavanagh was just 40 years old, a former mental health and addictions counselor, a mother of two, a woman who had, by her own admission, been born different, psychically gifted, spiritually attuned, but still very much rooted in the rhythms of daily life. It was 2 days before Christmas. She and her family had just finished building gingerbread houses. Her home was full of laughter, plans, and the anticipation of hosting her first big Christmas Eve dinner since the pandemic began. Then came the headache, the worst of her life. She texted her husband from upstairs, "Can you bring me some Tylenol and Advil? My head hurts so bad." Not long after, she slipped into unconsciousness. She would later wake up, unable to speak, unable to move, right side paralyzed, nonverbal, blind in one eye. But before that, she left her body. "The sun hit my face in the Care Flight helicopter," Amber says, "and as soon as it did, I was in my body. And then I wasn't." What followed was not a tunnel or a bright light. She simply opened her eyes and found herself standing barefoot in a radiant garden, wearing a white dress, surrounded by colors and light that don't exist here on earth. To her left stood beloved grandparents, her mother-in-law, and her dogs, even one that hadn't yet died. To her right, a vast crowd, people of all races, ages, and times. "That was all my other lives," she says. "They didn't look like me, but they were me. I just knew." And before her, near a gazebo, stood 3 beings she had known for years, her guides, Gail, Jessica, and one she calls Peter. "Not everyone meets their guides in this life," she explained, "but everyone has them. Everyone. You are never, ever alone." Amber wasn't told what to do. She was given a choice. And that's where the story really begins. In that garden, time dissolved. Amber says it felt like she was there for 50 or 100 years. She could feel the grass beneath her feet. The air shimmered with an otherworldly glow. Everything radiated love. "Everything within my sight glowed with this golden rainbow light," she says. "It was the most love I have ever felt. There were no words, not really, no language, no explanations, only knowing." She didn't walk up and hug her Nana, even though she had missed her terribly. "You didn't need to," she explains. "You knew what everyone was feeling. You could feel their love through the love that was all around you." To her left were the souls she'd loved in this life, family, pets, even her dog who was still alive on earth, but nearing death. To the right, the multitude of her past lives, diverse, unfamiliar, and yet unmistakably a part of her. And in front of her stood her guides, Gail, Jessica, and Peter, beings she had worked with spiritually for years. They helped me understand the outcomes of each decision, she says. There was no pressure, no judgment, just clarity. And that's when she understood. She had to decide whether to stay or to return. But this wasn't a bargain. It wasn't do the right thing. It was a knowing, a moment of alignment. I think for me, if the choice was leaving my kids to suffer, I would have come back no matter what. Still, she was shown what would come next if she returned. The pain, the isolation, the rage. My guide said the next 18 months would be the hardest of my life, she recalls. They said I would regret my decision, that I would wish I had stayed. And they were right. Coming back meant more than re-entering her body. It meant crawling, emotionally, spiritually, and physically, through something no one believed she'd survive. But she wasn't finished. She knew that now. Amber returned, back into a body that was broken, bleeding, and silent. She was blind in one eye, couldn't speak, couldn't move. The doctors told her husband she would never walk again, never be able to swallow her food, never talk. They told him she's going to need care for the rest of her life. But even in that state, tubes in her body, her brain damaged, Amber was aware. She remembers hearing the doctors speak as if she wasn't there. They were talking about me like I was a vegetable, but I was still in there. The neurosurgeon offered brain surgery, but warned it would likely kill her. Her husband, terrified and alone in that moment, asked the surgeon what he would do if it were his wife. I wouldn't do it, the doctor said. So he didn't. And then something changed. By day 4, Amber, who had been completely paralyzed, was walking. She spoke her first words. Her vision returned. She could eat, go to the bathroom, laugh, cry. They couldn't explain it. The neurosurgeon called me his miracle patient, she says. They said, you shouldn't be here. But surviving was just the beginning. Coming back into a paralyzed, nonverbal body that couldn't eat or talk or do anything, I definitely wanted to go back to the garden. She was angry at the choice she had made, angry at her broken body, angry at what she had burdened her family with. And then the side effects of the seizure medications set in: suicidal thoughts, emotional instability, the loss of her ability to regulate feelings. I felt like a baby, she said. I would laugh or cry at inappropriate times. I felt like a burden. Christmas came and went. Her family celebrated late in the ICU. They sang to her Christmas songs she somehow managed to sing back even before she could speak again. Her dog died. Then another died. She caught COVID, then pneumonia. Her driver's license was revoked. Her recovery, though miraculous, was brutal. It felt like dragging my feet through cement for every gain, she says. And yet, she didn't stop. Because even in her darkest moments, she remembered what she saw on the other side. Amber's body healed faster than anyone expected. Her spirit, well, that took longer. For a long time, she admits, I regretted coming back. It felt selfish. I thought I made my kids and husband suffer just so I could stay alive in a broken body. Her guides had told her the truth. The next 18 months would be brutal, and they were. Each moment of progress was followed by setbacks, grief, fear, and doubt. And yet, through all of it, something kept calling her forward. At first, she felt spiritually disconnected. The light she had known so vividly on the other side had dimmed. I didn't feel my guides anymore. I felt abandoned, Amber said later in an interview. But then they told me to paint. You need to try to paint what you saw on the other side. It sounded absurd. Her brain had been damaged. I could barely write, she explained. What do you mean I'm going to paint? That's ridiculous. But eventually she picked up a brush, and what came out were her memories. She said she tried the best I could, in her words, to paint what I saw on the other side. Scenes from the garden, the colors, the feeling of love that didn't exist in this world, but still lived in her. And from that one act of creation, something shifted. Her despair began to lift. Her connection to her guides and to the spiritual realm, once so quiet, began to return. It just got better, she said. Then things were presented, opportunities, people asking me to tell my story, which my guides said I would do. She began to tell her story, not to convince, but to comfort. People don't have to believe what happened to me, she says, but everything my guides told me would happen has happened. She published a book, At the Stroke of Eternity. She's now spoken to audiences around the world. She paints, she writes, and she continues to heal every day. But none of it is easy. Amber lives with the knowledge that 25% of her brain is gone. There's a literal void where memory and function once lived. She still has health complications. She still gets angry. She still fears another stroke. But she doesn't fear death. That place, the other side, is home. This is my school. And she no longer feels alone. Because that was the core of what she was shown, that no one ever walks this life alone. Every person on this planet has guides, she says. It doesn't matter what you believe, God, source, universe, none of it. There is someone walking with you every moment of your life. This is the story Amber came back to tell. Not a fantasy, not a doctrine, but a lived truth etched into her bones. That this life is school, that every soul is here to grow, to stretch, to struggle, and still choose love. That we are never, not for a single heartbeat, truly alone. And no matter how dark it gets, we are always being carried home. You've been listening to Remarkable, where the extraordinary hides inside the everyday, and where every story is an invitation to see the world differently. It's written and produced by me, Mark Good. If this story moved you, take a moment to sit with it. Let it settle. And when the time feels right, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a review wherever you're listening. It helps more than you know. In the show notes, you'll find a link to Amber Cavanagh's book, At the Stroke of Eternity. I've read it, and it's powerful. Amber shares her story and the many lessons and insights she's learned. There's also a link to a YouTube interview where Amber tells her story in her own voice. And finally, I've included a link to Amber's Facebook page. Until next time, remember, this life may be school, but love is still the teacher.